Well, you may have thought if you're at the top of your class, you were certain to succeed. And that's true in many cases, but not in the world of the federal court system, where the opposite seems to be the case. Statistics show that even as the federal judiciary gets more powerful, our benches are no longer filled with the best and the brightest. John Lott is the author of the new book, Dumbing Down the Courts, How Politics Keeps the Smartest Judges Off the Bench. John, thanks for joining us, by the way. Quite a provocative thesis here, that our federal judges are getting dumber even as they're getting more powerful. Why is this happening?
Right. Well, I started this project originally just because we all know the confirmations have gotten a lot more vicious, a lot more confrontational over time. But I was surprised to find that it's not equally tougher for everybody. They particularly go after the toughest ones. You know, if you were on a jury or called up for jury duty, my guess is you wouldn't be allowed on the jury because you're a very articulate guy. And the lawyers on either side would look to see whether you're tilting slightly one way or the other, and they'd strike you because you're more than one vote. You would influence 2 or 3 or 4 other members of the panel that would be there.
I would sure try.
Right. But a judge is similar. You know, if they're on an appeals court or a Supreme Court, they're just not worried about their own vote, but the fact that they could influence other judges, not only on their panels, but if they write decisions that could influence judges around the country in terms of what they write.
Well, that makes complete sense. So do we have evidence that this is actually true, that judges who are more impressive have a tougher chance getting confirmed?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. If you go to a top 10 law school, for example, and graduate from the top 10% of your class, it takes about 70% longer to get through the confirmation process than somebody who didn't go to a top school and didn't do particularly well.
Talk about a perverse incentive.
Right. Another way you could look at influence is citations to a judge's opinions by other judges. How often do they rely on your opinions that you write? If you're 20% more cites than the average, it took you about 60% longer to get through the confirmation process.
That's just totally distressing. Now, you're one of the country's great experts on firearms and policy around guns, so I cannot resist asking you what you made of the media coverage of the shootings earlier this week at the Navy Yard in Washington.
Well, obviously they made a lot of mistakes in terms of the AR-15 and other things. I suppose it's disappointing that people within an hour or two, even before they know what happened, are already speaking out on these issues. But there's one thing that kind of bothers me about the media coverage generally, and that is they never mention that this happens in a gun-free zone. You may have some commentary later that does, but just virtually every attack that we've had keeps on occurring there. And it's the easiest thing to check out.
In the gun-free zones.
Right, exactly. So, whether, obviously we know soldiers aren't allowed to have sidearms with them on military bases. I saw an interview with the father of a Marine who was stationed there saying that he was only a couple minutes away, but even though he's an expert in urban warfare, he didn't have a gun with ammunition that could go and allow him to stop the attack that was there.
It's totally distressing and a really good point. John Lott, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
A new book out on federal judges. Sounds fantastic.